We are kicking off with WWE's draft, which concluded with this week's supplemental picks, and as previously stated, the new rosters will be locked in with the May 6th episode of Raw. Many have criticized this year's draft as the vast majority of picks stayed on the roster they were previously on, and fans expected some bigger changes to come from the annual shakeup. There were also no tag team breakups, and while some NXT superstars were called up, the WWE rosters are mostly the same as how they were before. Even The Undertaker has criticized the draft as seeing not enough big changes happen, and his sentiments have been echoed throughout the WWE universe. Despite this, WrestleVotes reports that WWE is generally pleased with how the draft played out on TV, especially as the company wanted to avoid excessive high-level shuffling. WWE was satisfied with how the main event scene of Raw and SmackDown looked before the draft, and the company didn't want to make too many big changes. While the draft is over, fans may still see talent moved around, as WWE has hinted at a handful of trades before Monday's roster locking deadline before Raw. The inclusion of trades in the post-draft process allows WWE to fine-tune the brand rosters, ensuring the best possible setup for future storylines and rivalries. These post-draft trades have been exciting in the past, as in 2004, Triple H was traded from SmackDown back to Raw, and the Blue brand received Booker T and the Dudley Boys. Typically, WWE does not tell superstars about their brands, as they want to keep the TV reactions from drafted talent to be genuine, but that wasn't entirely the case this year. Fightful Select reports that several superstars found out about their new brands a few days before this week's Raw, but it's not specified which superstars were given a heads up about their future. WWE's 2024 draft may not have set the world on fire, but WWE themselves are pleased with how things went, and that's what matters to them in the end. Over to AEW Dynamite as Tony Khan, neck brace and all, opened the show with a statement from Jacksonville, Florida, but his broadcast was cut off by the Young Bucks. The Bucks reflected on last week's attack and pondered whether they'll be fired before revealing that a clause in their contract should protect them from termination. Adding insult to injury, the Bucks said that this clause means that if Khan is unavailable, running of AEW programming falls to the EVPs, giving the brothers the reins over Dynamite. The Bucks announced that they'd be running the show going forward as a new reign of terror has dawned in AEW. Now, Swerve Strickland had a long road to the AEW World title, and he's quickly finding out that the dynamic is very different when you're the one on top. Strickland was flanked by Prince Nana to open Dynamite and spoke about the Bucks taking control of AEW given the absence of the injured Tony Khan. The Bucks appeared on the screen and weren't pleased with Strickland's comments, and in addition to fining him, revealed his Double or Nothing opponent to be Christian Cage. Flanked by the Patriarchy, Cage confronted Swerve in the ring and took the first shot, knocking the AEW World Champion down to the mat. Swerve's attempts to fight back saw him overpowered by Cage, Nick Wayne, and Killswitch, and the Patriarchy's leader berated Strickland and reflected on their past as a team. The segment concluded with Killswitch ripping off one of Swerve's braids in a savage act, as the Patriarchy hopes to end Strickland's reign before it really gets going. But what do you think of Cage being Strickland's opponent at Double or Nothing? Let us know down in the comments. 1 week after their attack on Tony Khan, the Elite obliterated the returning Kenny Omega on Dynamite in the latter's first appearance on the show in months. Omega addressed his hometown crowd in Winnipeg and discussed his recovery from diverticulitis and resolved to return to the ring before calling out the Young Bucks. Omega said that despite the Bucks firing him from the Elite last month, he's still an EVP and still has a share of power, but he was swiftly interrupted by Kazuchika Okada. The showdown between the two New Japan rivals saw Omega challenge the Continental Champion to a future match, and Okada claimed that he was the new best bout machine. Omega was then blindsided by Jack Perry, who took out intervening security with a chair, but was hit with a Snapdragon suplex by Omega, admittedly to his own detriment. Omega tried to deliver the V-trigger to Perry, only to suffer a steel chair to the midsection, and commentary highlighted the gravity of this attack given Omega's health battles. The Bucks then feigned wanting Perry to stop before turning on Omega and hitting the EVP trigger, and it was only because of an appearance by FTR that this attack ended when it did. Omega was fortunate that FTR came out to help, but given his condition, there's questions as to why he was on this week's Dynamite in the first place. According to Fightful Select, Omega's appearance on the show was an effort to increase ticket sales for the show, among other reasons for his appearance. Fans haven't seen much of Omega in recent years, as he missed much of 2022 due to injuries and his suspension following Brawl Out, and there's no word when he'll be wrestling again. Omega is one of AEW's big stars, so it's not surprising that he was used to boost ticket sales this week, and we'll have to see if this strategy paid off when the numbers come in. Not too long ago, it was reported that Eric Rowan had pulled from multiple independent appearances due to an exclusive contract he'd signed, which many thought was WWE. It's hard to think of another wrestling company that would force Rowan out of his independent bookings, and we now have confirmation that he's back with WWE. According to PW Insider, Eric Rowan has officially inked a new deal with WWE, which comes 4 years after his departure and after a handful of appearances for AEW. It's unclear what Rowan will do now that he's back, but there's been speculation he'll be part of the rumored Uncle Howdy faction, and whatever the case, expect Rowan on WWE TV soon enough. It was last month that Tonga made his WWE debut as part of Solo Sikoa's bloodline, and now the former New Japan star has made his in-ring debut at a recent live event. At the show in Bologna, Italy, Tonga and Sikoa got an unlikely win over LA Knight and Randy Orton, given that the faces often win at live events to please the crowd. Tonga may have been on the winning side, but he took an RKO from the Viper after the match, which certainly pleased the crowd in the Unipol Arena. Tonga spent nearly 14 years in New Japan, but has been thrust into a prominent spot in WWE so far, which certainly bodes well for his future in the company. In recent days, it was confirmed that Drew McIntyre has signed a new multi-year deal with WWE, putting to bed any rumors that he'd be leaving to join a rival promotion. It had been known since over a year ago that McIntyre's contract was coming to an end, and the two sides were in no hurry to reach a new deal, and McIntyre has now explained why. On the Pat McAfee show, the Scottish Warrior discussed re-signing and said rumors of him leaving to go somewhere more elite were greatly exaggerated. He explained, "At the top, there are a lot of things going on, a lot of opportunities if you get to the top. I've been to the top, and whatever people are trying to stop me getting to the top, it's not gonna happen. If you try to politic your way ahead of me, I'll just beat you down and I'll get myself ahead of you. I'm too big and wise, and that's why I'm staying with WWE for the foreseeable future. I wasn't gonna go anywhere. If anyone was unsure reading those internet rumors, we were just in a place where I had to get things right with my family. I got with Nick Khan and Triple H, they were so understanding. Drew McIntyre is never gonna leave WWE, and it's awesome The Rock made that announcement. It's the first time he ever did that for any WWE superstar." McIntyre always intended to re-sign with WWE, and now that he's sorted out things with his family, he was happy to put pen to paper and make his new deal official. It's certainly a good sign for him that The Rock personally endorsed him re-signing with WWE, as this time a decade ago, McIntyre was on the cusp of being released from the promotion. With The Rock, Nick Khan, and Triple H all behind him, things look very promising for Drew McIntyre, who has years to come as a top superstar in WWE. McIntyre had plenty to say about his WWE contract, but he also had some choice words about his nemesis CM Punk in an escalation of their deeply personal feud. On the show, McIntyre spoke about his feud with Punk and what he plans to do, and even brought up Punk's wife AJ Lee. He said, "I'll tear you apart on social media. I'll step from behind the keyboard and I'll tear you apart physically. Now if I wasn't married, I'd take your girl too. That's the kind of troll I am." McIntyre and Punk have continued to escalate their feud, with Drew taking credit for Punk's injury and Punk costing McIntyre the World Heavyweight title at WrestleMania 40. Both men are currently injured, but their feud has been one of the best things on WWE TV as of late, and what do you make of Drew's comment? Let us know down below. At AEW Dynasty, Bryan Danielson put on an instant classic with Will Ospreay that was run by the Brit, and Danielson was left worse for wear after the match. On the May 1st edition of Dynamite, Excalibur explained that due to injuries sustained in the match, Danielson won't be traveling for some time until he's healed up. Following the incident, Tony Khan confirmed that Danielson isn't cleared for travel, and as a result, his return to AEW television remains uncertain. Bryan was seen being escorted backstage at Dynasty for further assessment, and Ospreay addressed the situation during the post-Dynasty media scrum by saying, "It seems that Bryan got hurt on the Storm Driver, and I didn't see the doctor call. So I want to apologize on that. Obviously, within the confines of wrestling, in the ring, it's your life and mine until you see the vice of what you did. I feel awful about this. Even though 90% of the time it's been fine, seeing the damage it has done, I'm gonna retire using the Stormdriver 91. I don't think it's right for me to continue using it after seeing what it did to Bryan, for someone I got a huge respect for. So to see the outcome, although I'm happy everyone enjoyed the match, I'm disappointed in myself, and I apologize to Bryan, AEW Medics, and Tony. Once again, Bryan Danielson is on AEW's injured list, and we're wishing the American Dragon a speedy recovery in this final year of his career as a full-time talent. But what do you make of this situation? Should Danielson tone it down in the ring? And was Ospreay right to retire the Stormdriver 91? Let us know down in the comments. It was on last week's Rampage that Trent Beretta won his parking lot brawl with Chuck Taylor after hitting a piledriver and continued an attack on Chuck's injured knee with a metal wrench. On this week's Dynamite, Orange Cassidy gave a heartfelt update on Taylor, stating that due to the injuries caused by Beretta, Taylor's wrestling career was over. Trent then came out and OC rushed towards him to get revenge, only to be stopped by security, and Beretta blamed Chuck's career coming to an end on Cassidy. An appearance from Don Callis made clear that this was far from over, as Cassidy is seeking revenge for Taylor against the man who ended his career. With the TBS title on the line, Adam Copeland defended against Buddy Matthews, and this was a good match, which especially got cooking after the second break. Copeland's Avalanche Impaler and Matthews' various strikes all looked great, but the only issue they had was how it was paced in some places. There were also loud chants for Matthews' fiancée, Rhea Ripley, which, depending on how you see it, was a fun moment for the crowd, or disrespectful to the two men working in the ring. Despite the fans chanting, "We want mommy," Ripley didn't appear, and the match saw Copeland get the win and tease embracing his darker side after the match. Copeland seemed ready to hit Matthews with the concerto before the lights went out, and when they came back on, Malachi Black was encouraging Copeland to hit the move. Matthews himself appeared to do the same, and Copeland looked conflicted and briefly teased using the chair on Black instead. However, the lights went out and Copeland stood alone in the ring when they returned, as the commentary team speculated whether the TNT champion has changed since being misted by Black at Dynasty. In a recent report, it was alleged that The Rock has an issue with chronic tardiness, which led to the filming of Amazon's Red 1 film going over budget due to him being late. It was also claimed that The Rock was 3 hours late to his WrestleMania 40 tag team main event on night 1, but now the final boss has seemingly confirmed that this is not true. On Instagram, The Rock shared photos seemingly from the day of WrestleMania 40 Saturday, which showed him being present before the show and making sure everything was ready. A WWE EVP has refuted the claim that The Rock was late to the show and has said that The Rock was in fact early and has been a pleasure to work with as part of his return. As for Red 1, a spokesperson for Amazon said that the notion Rock was 8 hours late simply isn't true, as The Rock is reportedly very punctual despite what's being said. At WWE NXT Spring Break-In Night 2, Natalya and Lola Vice faced off in NXT Underground, and the two held nothing back in the fight that saw Vice get the win. Fightful reports that both women got a standing ovation backstage after heading to the back, as those working at NXT were appreciative of the efforts the two made. Vice comes from an MMA background, so it makes sense that she got the TKO win over Natalya, but even in defeat, the veteran, alongside Vice, earned a lot of praise behind the scenes. Recently, Vince McMahon listed all of his stock in TKO for sale, which didn't come as a massive surprise given that he's seemingly completely gone from both that company and WWE. What did surprise fans though was when Nick Khan unloaded a ton of his own stock in TKO, and given McMahon's actions, some speculated if this was a sign of Khan's imminent exit. In an update though, it's confirmed that there's no evidence to suggest that Khan will be leaving WWE, and the shares listed have been on the market since last year, before McMahon's exit. As if that weren't enough, Khan's employment agreement extends until September 2025, and the WWE president has shown no signs of wanting to leave the company whatsoever. Khan has made some massive changes in recent years, many of which have been well received by fans, and expect plenty more from Nick in WWE's future endeavors. More from Raw, which saw an appearance by Patrick Mahomes, who in a surprising move given that the show was in his hometown, was presented as a heel who tried to help Logan Paul. The Maverick borrowed 3 of Mahomes' Super Bowl rings and tried to use them for a punch on Jey Uso, but missed the main event star and clocked JD McDonough instead. Speaking on his Ref and Rant show, former WWE official Jimmy Corderas spoke about Mahomes being a heel in Kansas City and questioned why WWE had him be a heel. Corderis argued that Mahomes should have been a face and get a big pop from the fans in Kansas City, but instead, WWE confused fans with his appearance, according to Corderis. WWE has never shied away from celebrity involvement, and having Mahomes was a big get, but could his appearance on Raw have been better? Let us know your thoughts down below. With the FTW Championship on the line, Chris Jericho retained against Katsuyori Shibata, albeit thanks to a chokeslam through a table on Shibata by the colossal Big Bill. The pairing of Bill and Jericho could be great, and Chris has typically worked well in a mentor role, and this could see both men move further up the card. Speaking of Jericho, the AEW star recently appeared at an NHL game between the Winnipeg Jets and the Colorado Avalanche and was confident the Jets would win. Not long after Chris's appearance, the Jets lost 6-3 to the Avalanche, as Jericho's litany of skills in the ring seemingly don't extend to picking winners in the world of hockey. In the world of wrestling, injuries can happen at any time, and that's a painful lesson Jayne learned during the second night of NXT Spring Break-In this week. Jayne lost to Thea Hale on the show, and while Fallon Henley turned on Hale after the match, the spotlight remained on Jayne and her gruesome facial injury. To seemingly hint that she might have sustained a broken nose, Jacy Jayne shared a throwback photo of John Cena with a similar-looking injury from back in 2015. This broken nose was caused when Cena's face collided with a flying knee from Seth Rollins during an episode of Raw, an injury the then-heel Rollins was very pleased about. We hope to have an update on Jayne's condition, as a broken nose is something nobody wants, and it goes to show that injuries can happen at any time in the ring. Back to Dynamite, and in his first post-AEW World title match, Samoa Joe faced Isaiah Cassidy, who received "Joe is gonna kill you" chants that brought a smile out of the former world champion. Undeterred, Cassidy grabbed Joe's towel and began dancing with him, and Joe quickly launched his assault, including propelling his opponent in the air so he could watch him fall. What could have been a squash match ended up lasting longer than expected, but it was still too short to be anything special, and ended with Joe getting the clean win. In a battle of two of AEW's strongest talents, Claudio Castagnoli got the win over Brian Cage, and getting the win with the sharpshooter certainly popped the Canadian crowd. Dynamite also saw Mariah May face the woman who hopes to win the women's world title later this month, Serena Deeb. Deeb showed off her technical prowess, but May wasn't to be outdone and ended up with the upper hand on the professor as the show cut to commercial. This was a great display of skills from both a veteran and a rising star, and was a match one would benefit from rewatching just to make sure you catch everything they did. Deeb locked May in a submission, but May refused to tap out, so Storm threw in the towel to save her friend from suffering too much damage. During last week's Dynamite, Jon Moxley defended his IWGP World Heavyweight title against Powerhouse Hobbs, and the latter suffered an unfortunate knee injury during the match. Now, Fightful Select reports that Hobbs' injury is significant, and he will require surgery that will happen imminently if it hasn't happened already. With details about the injury scarce, it's unclear how long Hobbs will be out of action for, though with this being a surgery, he'll at least be missing for a couple of months. On Twitter, a fan claimed that Hobbs is constantly injured, which sparked the wrath of the former TNT champion, who dared the fan to list these alleged injuries. Hopefully Hobbs will not be out for long, as he is a promising star in AEW, but for now, he has to take a break from the ring, and we're wishing him a speedy recovery. Jay White got the win over Dante Martin in a fun match, but given this happened right after Kenny Omega's segment on Dynamite, it was hard to ignore the crowd feeling drained during the bout. Kyle O'Reilly defeated Rocky Romero in a technically sound match, though one couldn't help feel like the two were holding back and would have a better match if more time was given. And in a street fight, Willow Nightingale arrived with a trash can lid to face Sky Blue, and the pair took the fight to the crowd right away. Willow started ripping at the barricade she wanted to use to hurt Blue, and the show ended up going into overtime, meaning the pair had time to make this interesting without rushing. Blue was bleeding from the head after the break, which made her look even more manic as she grabbed a bag of tacks and dumped them all over the ring. Both women took painful bumps with tables, chairs, tacks, and barbed wire, but it was a powerbomb through barbed wire and tables that finally secured the win for the TBS champion.